is from the beginning. Tony Stark. Visionary. Genius. American patriot. Is it better to be feared or respected? I say, is it too much to ask for both?
That is your legacy, Stark. Your life's work in the hands of those murderers. Is that how you want to go out?
I shouldn't be alive.
Is this the last act of defiance of the great Tony Stark?
Unless it was for a reason.
Or are you going to do something about it?
Anything that can kill me. You. Either way, and if they don't, I'll probably be dead in a week.
You're not the guy to make a sacrifice play. To lay down on a wire and let the other guy crawl over you.
Jarvis?
Don't waste it. Don't waste your life.
Don't leave me, buddy. I'm just not the hero type, clearly. What do you remember about your dad, huh? He was cold. He was calculating. He never told me he loved me. He never even told me he liked me. So it's a little tough for me to digest when you're telling me he said the whole future was riding on me and he's passing it down. I don't get that.
Stark, you know that's a one-way trip.
I just finally know what I have to do. And I know in my heart that it's right. Nothing's been the same since New York. I can't sleep. You experience things, man. Then they're over and you still can't explain them. Gods, aliens, or dimensions. I'm just a man who can't.
So you're a man who has everything.
I don't have anything. The threat is imminent, and I have to protect the one thing that I can't live without. That's you. Last night, I dreamt. We had a kid. Oh, Mr. Parker. So real.
What are you doing? Hey, I'm Peter.
Do you know that I was the only one who believed in you? Everyone else said I was crazy to recruit a 14-year-old kid. I just wanted to be like you. That's what, kid. And I wanted you to be better. What if somebody died tonight? Different story, right? Because that's what you. And if you died, Stark, actually, that's on me.
I don't feel so good.
You're right.
I don't know what's happening.
And what do you say to your other nickname, the Merchant of Death?
Big man and suit on. Take that off the road.
I'm the man who killed the Avengers.
I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Sir, please. Please, I don't want to go. I don't want to go.
Excuse me. They don't have doing research.
That would affect the team.
That would end the team. Isn't that the mission? Isn't that the why we fight? So we can end the fight so we get to go home?
You think you fight for us?
It's actually the only thing you really fight for is yourself.
Please fight for yourself.
I'll do what has to be done to save us from the worst.
He's my friend.
So was I.
This isn't going to change what happened.
I don't care. He killed me.
But one day you'll figure this out. And when you do, you will change the world. What is and always will be my greatest creation is you.
What? We create our own demons. And so, my journey had reached its end. I am Iron Man.
That is in true indeed, guys. He is Iron Man, and welcome back to the draw this week. It's been a very emotional one for a lot of fans, as you all probably know by now. What happened in Endgame? If you're watching this video and you still don't know, then there's going to be huge spoilers, because I'm going to be listening to a load more of the playlist that I've got going up in here. That's things that are cycling through, I'd look through, and we've got Endgame, loads of reviews. We've listened to a few reviews already this week, and yeah, I'm going to be listening to a few more, because I found a few more that sort of insights in the time travel aspect in the film and things like that. And again, guys, if you haven't seen the film, then definitely check it out before watching this video. And if you want to see how I drew all of this, which you'll see very shortly, I'm just getting something queued up and ready, and let's go and check that out now. Looking for at least a 15-minute video and things like that, but where's my mouse? Because I've lost it. Cordless. Let's get to the out of place. PC, right. Hopefully you're seeing everything okay. So let's go over here. This is what we've been working on, guys. It's Tony Stark's snap, or the moment he says, "I am Iron Man," for the very last time. Again, guys, that was emotional, and that moment when everything just came to an end, but not truly to an end, because it was a new beginning for a lot of new characters, and a lot of new aspects can be taken from it. And I wonder where the MCU is going to be going from now on. If you're new to the channel, guys, I'm Blut084, BLUT084 Art and Games. I'm here every single day on YouTube, occasionally on Mixer, but every day and night over on Instagram. Same name, different place. And just quickly, if I can, show you what was drawn on paper this week in the comparison, if you like, and it has been digitized. We're now digitizing it. We've done the exterior lines, as you can see here, and we're going to be continuing on with that now. I'm going to be using this app called Critter, which is completely free, guys, if you haven't seen it before. So you can take what you've drawn and take a picture on your tablet and such, and then redraw as such over the same thing. As you can see, it's the same lines and everything like that. But if you want to see this one come to life, and how I created this one from the very, very scratch on paper with just pencil, then definitely check out the very first video in this line of homage to Iron Man, shall we say. I'm going to be today colouring it in. It's such a vast term of colouring it in, but yeah, I'm going to be colouring this in with the tools you have here. We've got texture tools, and hopefully you might be able to see them a lot better today, actually, thinking about it. Let's flip my camera. Okay, yeah, you are getting because I'm looking at it on my phone as well, guys, just to see what everybody might be seeing. You may be getting all that bad, so what I will do is when I add all of the effects, I will make a recording, so you can see everything in full quality, and same with the app and everything I'm using here, all the effects. So what I'll do, I'll only use the digital tools, which you can see up the top here. We've got effects here, and then we've got inking, which we've already done, but it may come in handy for like shading, things like that. Paint tools, maybe with the hair, maybe we can I can make a metal texture with it. Not sure. Again, guys, this is completely free. It is like the poor man's version of what was it called? Photoshop, basically. I saw a review one time from Draw with Jazza. If you're a fan of him, you'll know which one I mean. But if you haven't got the app already, guys, this is on the PC. It's completely free. If you need a link, let me know in the comment section, and I'll do so. But otherwise, enjoy what I'm going to do. Enjoy what I'm listening to, because I will be listening to some more reviews. I think actually it's Timeline, which we chose a moment ago. If you have a review thing that you want to listen to while I'm drawing and you want to have a chat, again, leave me a comment in the comment section. We are completely live right now. But just to tell you once more, guys, this will be recorded next time when I add all the effects. Shading possibly will be a little bit thing that I'll do offline as well, just so you can see what I'm doing, because I don't think you'll be able to see everything with the quality of my using the live cam. Whereas normally I do screen capture for this kind of art. With the camera, it's fine because I'll be doing with pencil. You can see my hands and things like that, and that's why I do it that way. But yeah, let's get on with this. If I need to explain anything, I will, like I'm saying with the texture tools and things like that. We've already used one texture tool, and that was the hair tool. To just pick that one up. It will then. There we go. And zoom in. And now we use that for the hair up here. Again, we can use the opacity. Ooh, that's red. We don't want that. I was about to colour, I think. And that. I was about to say no. I'll go live last stream. Yeah, the hair tools. You can turn down the opacity, so I'll get that nice dark red and put it in just underneath. And again, we've got different layers. I keep saying again, we've got different layers here. That is the fine line for the gauntlet and Tony's face. As you can see, I've got a few different colors. Again, spoilers, guys, if you don't know what those colors are, that is where he takes on the energy. I don't really understand why he didn't pump all that energy into his core, which, you know, with the very first film, as you saw just a moment ago. And there's the hair layer. We've got iron suit, which would just literally zoom back out again. So we've got it. So you say this is in the face, and the gauntlet is in the foreground, and the iron suit is in the midground, and then obviously you've got the background behind there, which we did do a little bit, tried to do a little bit of effect on the paper version, as you saw, with the color streaking through. And I can use a whole lot of different things like that. Say I was going to grab this tool up, I don't know, grab lines up here, and we'll go to the iron suit. So we'll not do that now, but we'll add another layer. Okay, saying my words wrong. Right, go down. Get rid of that. So we'll call that background for now. Background. I probably spelled that wrong, but you get a shit. It's my art. I know what it means. So we'll get, say, a nice purple, because that's kind of end game colors. And we're on that layer, so we'll just do a streak across. And that appears like it's going through everything. It's actually not. It's actually underneath the whole of everything else, as we've got the paper layer there. So if I turn that one back up, whoops, what do I do then? Turn that one on. You'll see what I tried to do on the other side. Which I'm going to try again with the purple. Again, it looks like I've gone over everything, but I actually haven't. If I was to put, we'll go back to the layer, and I'll go to the irons. No, let's go to the face and put a color layer. So that has to be a color layer that's underneath the fine lines. So we'll call that one color. I don't know. Color face. Face and G. Gauntlet. Gaunt. I don't know if you can see what I'm writing there, but that's why I'm sort of saying it out. Face and gaunt. So we're underneath the face here. Because I want to put a colour on the gauntlet here. Actually, I want to have a nice colour on the gauntlet. This. Let's go to reference. This is my reference picture, which I was working from. It's sort of, isn't it? As you know, I'm going to get the lightest color red here by picking on the color by doing that. I don't actually know what it's called. I've never known what that's called, and it took me ages to figure out how to use it here on the critter. You can't even see the tool. Whoops, sorry, because I'm using my camera. But this one is a very annoying tool to find, not to use. Well, got the right color. So there's, look at the color there. If I was to get back to the tools and then get off the textures and go back to digital, grab that just for a thing, and that's the color we just picked. Now we ain't gonna want that for the red. That isn't gonna look nice, but it is that color, the lightest line. So let's now color pick something else and maybe say that color. Again, it's purple. It's all purple. Surprised. There's a lot of purple in this color. Again, it's purple, it's not red. His iron suit's red, guys. Damn. Right, so I'm gonna have to just wing it. I'm gonna get into more. faff around with the shade and colours as well, which is always handy. You don't always quite want that. I want a darker shade of that. I'd say round about like that. Yeah. Let's turn that one off again. Where is he to? Turn that off. Bring a bit some colours on. And I'm also, I think I'll turn off the background just for now because that's just doing my head in. Right, I'm going to start faffing. I'm going to start colouring. There's all the tools I'm going to be using. I will tell you which ones, but you should be able to see which ones I'll be using. Keep listening and enjoy.
Avengers Endgame did a lot of things right, and one of them was blending moments of humor with moments that ripped our hearts out and stomped all over them. Yeah, Marvel Studios is really good at that. There were plenty of pop culture references and obvious jokes, but there were also some subtle Easter eggs and references that you might have missed. In this video, we're going to go over some of the funniest Endgame moments that some fans didn't notice. Okay, so maybe the God of Thunder spent most of Avengers Endgame looking slightly less than majestic, but don't forget that Thor is a character straight out of Norse mythology, which was why it was so hilarious to see him interacting with another mythological creature, although we didn't see it on the big screen. Following the destruction of Asgard in Thor Ragnarok and Thanos and the Black Order claiming so many Asgardian lives in Avengers Infinity War, Thor was feeling a little bit down, to put it mildly. In Avengers Endgame, we learned he had settled into a town called New Asgard, but that his own people rarely saw him. Instead, he sequestered himself inside with Korg and the Meek to drink beer and apparently play Fortnite. Hey, he's clearly on a journey to find himself, and sometimes that looks kind of strange to outsiders. But when Korg has to deal with someone rude while playing, Thor takes his headset and delivers a verbal lashing worthy of a true Norse god. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we got to see Thor fight a troll. Only instead of the rude, unhelpful, bridge-dwelling kind from Norse mythology, this was a more modern version of the story. This was honestly one of the greatest moments of the whole movie, and nobody threw any punches, activated any technology, or decapitated anyone. It was a moment that both Marvel movie fans and comic book buffs enjoyed, but was really the best for people who love both. After journeying back to the Battle of New York along with Tony Stark, Scott Lang, and Bruce Banner, Steve Rogers ended up in an elevator in a scene which looked incredibly familiar. Mostly because it was nearly exactly the same as the infamous scene from Captain America: The Winter Soldier. That scene was one of the greatest Marvel movie moments of all time, but this one involved a lot less fighting and a lot more comic book references. He first tries to bluff the secret Hydra agents to get them to hand over the Infinity Stones, but that doesn't work. So Steve shows his allegiance by uttering the words, "Hail Hydra." This was a reference to an extremely controversial Marvel Comics storyline called Secret Empire. It revealed that Steve Rogers was a devoted Hydra agent until Allied forces manipulated his mind with a device called the Cosmic Cube. Needless to say, fans were livid to see the great hero Captain America proclaim his allegiance to the evil organization Hydra. This one may not be as deep of a callback as Hail Hydra, but it definitely still made us laugh. We know that the character Tony Stark has changed as a result of events which occurred in the MCU. After the Battle of New York, he was driven to create Ultron after realizing his greatest fear, and he became Iron Man after seeing the destruction his weapons had caused. Then there are the more mundane changes, like giving up dairy, but according to Tony Stark, this change was made all the more difficult by the fact that beloved ice cream brand Ben & Jerry's had created a flavor in his honor called Stark Raving Hazelnuts. But Tony wasn't the only member of the Avengers to be honored by Ben & Jerry's. In Infinity War, Wong states that there's also a flavor called Hulka Hulka Burning Fudge. And it wasn't an especially important plot point, but in Avengers Endgame, we actually got to see Bruce Banner chowing down on a container of Ben & Jerry's. And we can only assume it was the flavor created in his honor. Plus, although it looked like a normal pint-sized container at first glance, to fit into his Hulk-sized hand, it had to have been a gallon of Ben & Jerry's. Talk about expensive. Ooh. This Marvel movie moment brings up more questions than it answers, but we're not complaining. Honestly, sometimes it seems like Scott Lang is speaking for the audience. Anything prefaced with the word quantum flies right over his head, and he struggles to understand the intricacies of how time travel could actually work. And like a whole lot of us, he tries to substitute his lack of scientific knowledge with movie references. While he's trying to wrap his mind around the whole time travel thing and how the rules work in the MCU, he mentions many movies which have to do with time travel. Interestingly enough, a couple of these movies involve actors who are also members of the MCU. Michael Pena plays the role of Luis, and he's also in A Wrinkle in Time. And of course, Sebastian Stan portrays Bucky Barnes in the MCU and is in the Hot Tub Time Machine. Do Michael Pena and Sebastian Stan exist in the MCU, or do Luis and Bucky have secret careers as actors? These are the real hard-hitting Marvel questions that we want to know the answers to. It's not easy to take note of every single tiny detail or Easter egg that gets packed into a Marvel movie, especially considering the movie theater employees get irritated when you ask them to rewind the movie a little bit and then pause so you can examine something. In Avengers Endgame, we learned that Luis's van had ended up inside of a storage facility, which was overseen by a security guard played by Ken Jeong. It's no secret that the Russo brothers love Community, and they also love to include references to the show whenever possible. You might have also spotted actress Yvette Nicole Brown in an elevator with a security badge at some point in Endgame. But let's get back to Ken Jeong, who we saw reading a book for a brief second before attending to Scott Lang. If you missed it, the name of the book was Terminal Breach by J.G. Ballard, and it's a collection of short stories including one entitled Endgame. There's also a book with the same name written by Steve Bradshaw, which tells the story of a president who has to make a difficult choice which could result in millions of lives lost when the country is threatened. Not only do we pretty much have to love Morgan Stark because she's the daughter of our beloved Tony Stark, may he rest in peace, but there's no denying she's just a really cute kid. So it's not surprising that while attending Tony's funeral, Happy Hogan vowed to do whatever he could for little Morgan. But she had a request which might have seemed a bit strange at first, and without the proper context. Morgan tells Happy that she's hungry, and she wants cheeseburgers. Happy declares that he'll ensure Morgan has all the cheeseburgers she could ever want. But there's a reason she named that specific food. In Iron Man, a cheeseburger is what Tony wanted the most when he escaped from the cave and made it back to safety. And even that was a joke based on a real incident from Robert Downey Jr.'s life. Prior to getting cast as Iron Man, he struggled with addiction, but says he had a moment of clarity while eating a fast food burger from Burger King. According to him, the burger was so gross that it caused him to reevaluate his life and clean up his act. There was a lot going on in Avengers Endgame, so if you weren't paying attention to all of the numbers that popped up, don't worry, we'll fill you in. We admit to being as confused as Scott Lang when Bruce Banner uses his various scientific instruments, but we did see a familiar number displayed while he was running some tests. That number was A113, which is familiar to Disney and Pixar fans. It shows up in pretty much every single Pixar movie, and it's a reference to a classroom at the California Institute of Arts. When listening to the message Tony Stark leaves for Pepper Potts, you might get hung up on the whole imminent death thing, but he does mention how long he's been floating through space. He says 21 and then corrects himself and says 22. That's because Endgame is the 22nd movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And when Thanos goes to the Garden, we learn it's called Planet O259S. The name doesn't really roll off the tongue, but it's a reference to the Avengers Volume 1, Edition 259, which featured Nebula and Captain America. Then we have the fact that Scott Lang's van ends up in a storage area labeled 616, which is a significant number to comic book fans. It's a nod to the Earth 616 comic book universe. Poor Black Widow, and we're not just saying that because she ended up falling to her doom off cliff on Vormir. At the beginning of the MCU, her character was often underutilized, and it seemed like nobody could agree on how she should be portrayed. At first, it seemed like she had a thing with Clint Barton until it was revealed that he had a secret family. Then there was the totally shoehorned-in romance between her and Bruce Banner, which we saw in Avengers Age of Ultron. She was able to calm him down and get him to transform from Hulk to Bruce Banner, and she also suggests the two of them run away together, despite the fact that they don't even seem to know each other particularly well. In Avengers Endgame, Bruce visits Thor, who's in something of a funk, to put it mildly. He tells the God of Thunder that he's been in a tough spot before, and that someone helped him out of it. Thor jokingly asks if it was Natasha, and that he didn't find their romance any more convincing than the rest of us did. Right before Avengers Endgame hit theaters, it seemed like all anybody could talk about was the idea that Scott Lang would shrink down, crawl inside a very uncomfortable part of Thanos, and no, we're not talking about the backseat of a Volkswagen, and then grow large. But before that, fans were talking about the rear end of a different Marvel character, Captain America. Actor Chris Evans shared a poster which showed his posterior in great detail. When he posted it on Twitter, the website cropped the picture to give fans an even better look at this lovingly detailed area. So, needless to say, in Endgame, there were a lot of jokes about Captain America's rear end. While those were great, we think Marvel was trying to tell us something. At the end of the movie, we see old Cap sitting down, so we can't see if the super soldier serum prevented his butt from aging like the rest of us. Now, remember during Jurassic Park when Samuel L. Jackson's character says, "Hold on to your butts"? Samuel L. Jackson also plays Nick Fury, who showed up near the finale of Endgame. Clearly, Marvel Studios is trying to tell us to hold on to our butts and appreciate them while we still have them. Poor Rocket. He's had a rough life, and it hasn't been any easier considering people constantly mistake him for different creatures. At the beginning of Avengers Endgame, Tony Stark even admits he thought Rocket was a Build-A-Bear until he started talking. In Tony's defense, he was having some health issues at the time, but later on in Endgame, when he was feeling better, he called Rocket Ratchet. It could have been because Rocket was using tools, but it seemed more likely to be a reference to the Ratchet & Clank video game series. And before you Google what kind of animal is Ratchet, we'll save you some time. He's a fictional animal called a Lombax. Even in Guardians of the Galaxy, Star-Lord called Rocket a raccoon. And we learned Rocket doesn't even know what a raccoon is. But at least Star-Lord was closer than Thor, who called Rocket a rabbit. Now we're left wondering about the flora and fauna of the original Asgard after this joke from Endgame. When Thor and Rocket travel back in time to retrieve the Reality Stone from Asgard, the Asgardian soldiers also call Rocket a rabbit. What do the rabbits on Asgard even look like? If you're particularly observant or just a big fan of the Star Wars franchise, you may have noticed a strange trend that took place during Marvel's second phase of movies. Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige is admittedly a huge Star Wars fan and decided to pay tribute to the classic movie The Empire Strikes Back. As a result, every movie released during Phase 2 involves a character losing either a hand or an arm in loving memory of Luke Skywalker. In Iron Man 3, Aldrich Killian loses his arm while fighting against Tony Stark. And in Thor the Dark World, Thor momentarily loses his hand when Loki pretends to chop it off. Bucky loses his arm during a flashback of the Winter Soldier, and Gamora rips Groot's arms off in Guardians of the Galaxy. There was also a great Star Wars tribute in Avengers Endgame when Nebula sacrificed her robot arm by reaching into the orb's container. It was a great movie moment combining two of our favorite fantasy franchises. Although he wasn't in Avengers Endgame long enough to make his usual jokes and pop culture references, we did get to have a few smiles involving Peter Parker. They didn't quite balance out all of the crying we did on his behalf, but we'll take what we can get at this point. In Spider-Man Homecoming, Ned helps Peter disable the training wheels protocol in a Spider-Man costume. This unlocks an enhanced combat mode which features an instant kill ability. Needless to say, Peter is horrified and deactivates it immediately. However, when he's overwhelmed by Chitauri in Endgame, we saw him resort to the very same setting. This was also a cute callback to Captain America Civil War. When Peter and Captain America met, Peter told Cap he was from Queens and asked where he was from. In Endgame, Captain America calls Peter Queens to get his attention when he throws Mjolnir. There's a fun moment of levity during a terrifying and epic battle. And it's definitely a more dignified name than Underoos. Apparently, Cap was paying attention while characters like Peter Parker and Scott Lang could barely contain their hero worship. One of the great debates following Avengers Infinity War was, who should we be the angriest at? Peter Quill for lunging at Thanos after he learned Gamora was gone and ruining the plan? Thor for not aiming for the head with Stormbreaker, which would have meant the decimation never happened? Or ourselves for being so emotionally invested in a superhero movie? No, definitely not that last one. But as angry as we were at the God of Thunder for majorly bungling this battle, it paled in comparison to how angry he was at himself. At the beginning of Avengers Endgame, Thor was positively sulky and mired in regret for his actions in Infinity War. While we don't blame him for feeling bad, a depressed Thor is a pretty sad sight. So obviously he's excited when the group heads out to find Thanos and he has a chance to make up for his previous blunder. After learning Thanos already destroyed the Infinity Stones and seemingly their only chance at undoing the decimation, he immediately chops his head off with Stormbreaker. It was definitely shocking, especially considering that this is a Disney movie. When asked what he was doing, Thor replies he aimed for the head this time. Earlier, we talked about the many jokes in Avengers Endgame about how Captain America's butt, nay, America's butt, simply refuses to quit. But that wasn't the only thing Steve Rogers just wouldn't quit during the movie. He also made a ton of references to past Marvel movies, and we have to admit we loved every last one of them. When he encounters his past self after the Battle of New York, that Steve tells him, "I can do this all day." This is the same thing a young Steve Rogers told a bully in the first Avenger, and what he told Tony Stark during Civil War. Apparently, he doesn't enjoy being on the receiving end of that statement, and it's not hard to see why. At least he got to look at his own butt after the fight. And when we see the touching goodbyes between Bucky Barnes and Steve Rogers, they default back to their old don't do anything stupid exchange. We might not know Clint Barton's family particularly well, mostly because they totally came out of nowhere. But we do know that Clint is quite fond of them. In fact, he even retires from being a superhero so he can spend more time with them and presumably reduce his chances of dying young. Of course, he went back to his old ways when his team needed him in Captain America Civil War, a movie which ended up with him under house arrest. We wondered where Clint was in Avengers Infinity War, and the answer was apparently out in the middle of nowhere hanging out with his family. Of course, we see him training his daughter Lila Barton, who's totally not being set up to be the next Hawkeye or anything. It's an idyllic moment before the wife asks him a profoundly disturbing question, and wonders if he would like mayonnaise or mustard on his hot dog. Clint should definitely have known a terrible cosmic force was about to be unleashed, because who puts mayo on a hot dog? To make matters worse, one of his kids asks for ketchup on his hot dog. Clearly, the joke is that Clint's family has terrible taste in hot dog toppings. Was this included to make us feel less sad about them all being decimated? You decide. What was your favorite joke that took place in Avengers Endgame? Did it make our list, or did another moment make you laugh out loud? Share your favorite Endgame joke with us in the comments section below, and then click on that subscribe button for more videos from us here at CBR. Bye for now.
So we've got to the point where I've put a little bit of colour in. What do you think, guys? Do you like the effect that
We know all comic book fans have a long wish
list
list of things we'd like to see incorporated into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now that it's nearly time for Phase 4, we can start looking to the future instead of ruminating about the decimation like we've been doing for longer than we'd like to admit. Marvel Studios likes to keep things quiet until the moment is just right. But we do have some good ideas about what to expect during the upcoming Phase 4. It felt like we waited forever to see Avengers Endgame, and that's not just because Avengers Infinity War left us with so many unanswered questions. This movie was the conclusion of storylines that got started all the way back in 2008 with movies like Iron Man. We said goodbye to some much-beloved heroes and welcomed some new ones to the roster. After waiting years for it to come out, paying a premium for those ridiculous souvenir soda cups and sitting through 3 hours of footage, a task made all the more difficult due to the aforementioned soda, we finally had some answers. And then, of course, we immediately want to know what comes next. Hey, in our defense, we didn't even have a single post-credit scene to distract us. We were left staring at the black movie screen. And to be perfectly honest, we think it stared back into our souls a little bit. As we looked into the dark cinematic void, we asked ourselves, what about Phase 4? We're sure you know the Marvel movies break down into different phases, and while Endgame isn't the final movie in Phase 3, we'll get into that in a second, it brought huge changes with it that will be felt in Phase 4 and beyond. The first phase started with Iron Man in 2008, and is also made up of the Incredible Hulk, which everyone forgets exists, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America the First Avenger, and the Avengers. Phase 2 began in 2013 with Iron Man 3 and continued with Thor the Dark World, Captain America the Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers Age of Ultron, and finally, Ant-Man. Phase 3 began with Captain America Civil War in 2016 and will end with Spider-Man Far From Home coming out in just a few months' time. This phase also contains Doctor Strange, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Spider-Man Homecoming, Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther, Avengers Infinity War, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Captain Marvel, and of course, Avengers Endgame. Whew, that was extensive. Now go ahead and repeat that all back to us. Just kidding. Let's keep looking forward. It was recently said by Kevin Feige himself that Spider-Man Far From Home, the sequel to Spider-Man Homecoming, will actually be a part of Phase 3 and not Phase 4. But it comes out just months after Avengers Endgame, so you know what? We felt like including it in this video anyway. Things have changed, and we now know that it takes place shortly after the events of Endgame. But this might not be the last time we see our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, since we also expect to see him in Phase 4. Tom Holland is known to be a bit of a walking spoiler factory, and he may have dropped a huge hint about the future of Spider-Man in the MCU. During an interview, he talked about how Peter Parker is growing up and learning how to be the best hero he can be. He said it's going to be an exciting couple of movies, but at the time, we only knew about one movie after Homecoming, which was Far From Home. And Holland doubled down, saying there will be a Spider-Man 2 and 3, before adding, sorry Marvel. Well, at least he said sorry. Plus, who could stay mad at Spider-Man? So, while we'll be getting another Spider-Man movie in Phase 3, it looks like we'll be getting at least one more Spider-Man movie in Phase 4. In addition to Spider-Man, there are a few other Marvel franchises we'll be getting sequels to in Phase 4. One of those is for the
think
wildly
got
successful
things gonna
movie
happen.
Black
You
Panther.
think shut-
Although Marvel Studios
wants
kept
to
us waiting
shut
before
Dimensions,
confirming a
guys.
sequel, we were sure it was coming, and we
Ah.
finally got an assurance that it's a work in
Okay.
progress. Director Ryan Coogler is not only heading up the project, but he admits to feeling the
Ah,
pressure both in terms of time and quality. Hopefully this bodes well for the finished product, but it certainly has a lot to live up to. Supposedly, Black Panther 2 will start shooting in late 2019 or 2020, meaning it could very likely end up in Phase 4. We know it's going to have to be perfect before they release it, but the timeline still looks promising. Another popular movie whose sequel got the green light recently is Doctor Strange. Originally, the film was supposed to begin filming in 2018, but it seems like that's been pushed back a bit. Still, the movie seems like a sure thing, and many estimate it'll be released at some point in 2020. Doctor Strange 2 will likely involve Stephen Strange going head-to-head with Carl Mordo, who went from friend to enemy in the first movie. Marvel has been known to skimp on their villain backstories, so we have high hopes that they're building Mordo up into something compelling. In the first movie, Doctor Strange matched wits with the dreaded Dormammu, but there was actually another villain in line for the position of antagonist. Nightmare is an amazingly powerful and entertaining villain from the comic books, and originally he was going to be the bad guy in Doctor Strange. However, there was a lot of lore to pack into the movie, and Marvel decided it was too much to both explain the entirety of the mystic arts, time travel, Doctor Strange as a person, and Nightmare. Director Scott Derrickson is a huge fan of Nightmare, and we wouldn't be at all surprised to see him show up in the sequel to Doctor Strange. In addition to these sequels, we believe we may finally get to see a highly anticipated third movie in a popular Marvel franchise during Phase 4. Guardians of the Galaxy Volumes 1 and 2 were both directed by James Gunn, and the third movie was set to be released sometime in 2020, but that got seriously pushed back when Gunn was fired due to some controversial tweets he had made a decade prior. However, bringing in a new director isn't as easy as it might seem. Gunn had the loyalty of the cast and crew, and had worked on creating the script for the film. Thor Ragnarok director Taika Waititi said he personally wouldn't touch the project because it was the work of another director and it seemed like everyone else felt the same. Finally, Marvel Studios hired Gunn back, but now they have to wait until he's done with his other scheduled obligations, including Suicide Squad 2. But since a lot of the groundwork has been laid out for the movie and it's back on track, it doesn't seem too crazy to suggest it might roll out in time for Phase 4. Especially considering the conclusion of Endgame, we aren't the only ones eager to see what our favorite Guardians of the Galaxy are up to. We're also expecting the highly anticipated standalone Black Widow movie during Phase 4. This is a project which has been promised and cancelled before, but it looks like it's finally happening. Fans have been clamoring for this movie since the character was first introduced in the MCU, and it's well past time she had her own film. Of course, we're looking forward to seeing more of our old favorites in Marvel's Phase 4, but we also expect to see some exciting new additions to the MCU. Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige has been teasing us about a movie based on the Eternals since all the way back in April 2018. Of course, as always, he was as vague as could be, stating that it's one of many, many, many things that we are actively beginning to have creative discussions about. Well, that certainly sounds conclusive to us. Director Chloe Zhao has been linked to the project, as is famous actress Angelina Jolie. It's been rumored that it'll be filmed around the same time as the Black Widow movie, and should be released around the same time as well. The Eternals are ultra-powerful beings on par with Ego, who we met in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. It'll be interesting to see if these characters have existed in the MCU all this time. If you've been keeping up with Marvel movies, and we know you have, then you've probably noticed that it seems like it may be time for a new generation of superheroes. Peter Parker is supposed to be a high school student, and we've seen even younger characters drop some seemingly big hints about the future of the MCU. Despite Ant-Man and the Wasp, Scott's daughter Cassie talks about how she wishes she could be a superhero and fight crime next to her dad. And after a convenient time jump during Avengers Endgame, she's now a teenager played by Emma Furman. In the comic books, Cassie does become a superhero going by the names Stature and Stinger at various points. She's also a member of a superhero team known as the Young Avengers. And fans believe we've seen another up-and-coming hero, Hawkeye. No, not that Hawkeye. We've seen Clint Barton teaching his daughter Layla how to fire a bow and arrow, and it looks like she's gotten pretty darn good at it. In the comic books, Clint becomes known as Ronin, wielding a sword and taking on a darker outlook on life, just like we saw in Endgame. The comic version of the new female Hawkeye is named Kate Bishop, but it certainly seems like Marvel Studios is setting Layla up to become this hero instead. And in Captain Marvel, we were introduced to the adorable and precocious Monica Rambeau, who's clearly inspired by the heroics of Carol Danvers. In the comic books, Monica grows up to become a hero known first as Captain Marvel, but later taking on other names like Photon, Pulsar, and Spectrum. Another big hint based on current Marvel movie trends seems to be that Earth is getting played out. Instead, our heroes are taking to the skies and exploring other universes, which could also use saving. Captain Marvel says several times during Endgame that there are other planets out there who need help. So we wouldn't be surprised to see some new heroes with access to space travel in Phase 4. One name that frequently comes up is a hero known as Nova. When the Nova Corps is wiped out, Roman Day survives long enough to impart his powers onto a high school student named Richard Rider. Making a movie about Nova would both give us another younger character and one capable of interstellar travel. During Infinity War, Thanos said he had totally wiped out the Nova Corps, which we thought was a pretty major thing to happen off screen. It could be possible that he wasn't as thorough as he thought. If Captain Marvel is right about all the trouble in the universe, it seems like the cosmos could use all the help they can get. No offense to the Guardians of the Galaxy or Captain Marvel herself, but the universe is a pretty big place. It seems like Phase 4 is going to provide us with some highly anticipated heroes, as well as some new heroes for us all to get excited about. What are your predictions for the fourth phase of Marvel movies? Tell us what you realistically expect to see, and what you'd most like to see in the comments section below. Before you go, make sure to click on that subscribe button for the latest videos from us here at CBR. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.
Okay. There he is, guys. Let me know in the comment section. We are
As
live.
much as we love the Marvel
Or you can
Cinematic
leave
Universe, we
comments down
have to
below.
admit it's not perfect. With each new movie added to our collection, there are
Watching
certain
back.
elements which just don't seem to make sense. Over time, these plot holes add up, but it's possible they'll all be explained at some point during Avengers Endgame. The addition of time travel could send a ripple effect retroactively, making sense of certain scenes that left us scratching our heads. When you sit down to watch a superhero movie, you know you're going to have to suspend your disbelief somewhat. We know it's shocking that films about superpowered human beings aren't completely accurate. Marvel Studios has done a phenomenal job of creating a cinematic universe with established rules, storylines, and characters, while also finding a way to make us care about them. But it seems like each and every time a new movie comes out, there's at least one glaring plot hole that doesn't really make sense. Recently, Marvel Studios has been introducing some huge and potentially troublesome concepts into the universe which have the potential to change things forever. Primarily, we're talking about time travel and the idea of multiple alternate timelines. These concepts are ones comic book fans are familiar with, and we know that sometimes they can make things messy. While some of these things could affect the future of the MCU, some of them might also change events which have happened in the past. There's no shortage of theories about how time travel is going to be an important part of Avengers Endgame, but Redditor Hyped Up 80 points out that it could impact the history of the MCU. What if seemingly confusing and nonsensical moments can be retroactively explained with the reveal that time travel played a part? As an example, let's consider this one seemingly nonsensical moment from the movie Doctor Strange. We all know that Dr. Stephen Strange was a brilliant surgeon who lost the dexterity in his hands thanks to a terrible accident. Amazingly, throwing all of his money doesn't fix it, so he's forced to resort to desperate measures. He learns of a man named Jonathan Pangborn, who experienced healing which could only be explained as miraculous. The interaction between Pangborn and Strange prompts Strange to head out in search of Kamar-Taj and the remarkable powers it contains. Strange uses the last of his money to go to Nepal in desperate hopes of finding Kamar-Taj, only to discover the ancient magical training ground isn't exactly on Google Maps, so he decides to wander around for a bit. He eventually gets himself robbed and rather unwisely refuses to give up his watch. This decision could have easily resulted in his demise, but instead, he was rescued by Karl Mordo, who took him to Kamar-Taj. But why? There was an earlier moment when Doctor Strange helped out an injured stray dog. Was that Mordo's justification for not only rescuing Strange, but revealing the location of Kamar-Taj? And then, once Strange gets there, the Ancient One makes a big show of her powers before kicking him out again. Although Mordo seems to be the one who convinces her to accept Strange as a student, it seems like it was all a part of the Ancient One's plan, especially since later on in the movie, she revealed that she had been checking out the future periodically and was only unable to see past the moment of her own demise. Could the Ancient One have set these events in motion because of some knowledge she had of the future? As we mentioned,
She claimed not to be able to see past a certain amount of time, but this doesn't mean she was necessarily ignorant of what happened next. If Doctor Strange was able to travel back through time and connect with the Ancient One, then at some point he could have convinced her to take pity on a poor tourist who couldn't stand to give up his wristwatch. After all, we've seen Doctor Strange master the Time Stone and use it to do some pretty incredible things. In Avengers Infinity War, he used it to check out over 14 million futures, looking for one where our heroes are victorious. Who's to say he didn't make a quick stopover in the past to ensure things pan out a certain way? He could have easily had a chat with the Ancient One at pretty much any moment in time in order to ensure certain actions are taken. And because the Time Stone was inside the Eye of Agamotto, it seems reasonable that the Ancient One would be an important point of contact for Strange, especially if our heroes end up going back in time in order to find the Infinity Stones before Thanos does. It seems somewhat prudent to give the Ancient One a heads up. Otherwise, how are the remaining heroes going to find it during Endgame? And another seemingly interesting plot hole exists with another character who also has the means, motive, and opportunity to travel through time. During the movie Ant-Man, we learned that Scott Lang was a talented thief with a heart of gold. He only stole from criminals, but strangely enough, that defense didn't really hold up well in court. After he realized he couldn't even keep a job at Baskin-Robbins because of his criminal record, he got back to stealing after receiving a seemingly solid tip from a friend. Of course, we learned later it was all a setup orchestrated by brilliant scientist Hank Pym to test Scott and then get him involved in his quest. But why choose Scott Lang? It seemed like Hank put a lot of effort into getting Scott on his side specifically, despite ultimately not knowing anything about him except what he had read about his crimes. And to make this an even crazier coincidence, he has a daughter who was not only better qualified than Scott, but had a way better suit. When Hope questions her father about this very point, it's kind of lamely explained that Hank Pym fears losing Hope, especially after losing her mother. So why was Hope trained in combat in the first place if her dad never intended for her to be a hero? It just doesn't seem to make sense why Hank chose Scott specifically to be the new Ant-Man, especially in light of the fact that he had an already more qualified superhero at his disposal. But what if Scott Lang was able to travel back in time and meet Hank Pym at some point in time? Doctor Strange had access to the Time Stone between the events of Doctor Strange and Infinity War, but for all we know, Scott may also have traveled through time. During the mid-credit scene of Ant-Man and the Wasp, we saw Scott travel into the quantum realm while his associates looked on. Before he left, Janet Van Dyne, who had just spent ages living in the quantum realm, warned him to be careful of time vortexes. This seemed like a throwaway comment at first, but we decided to give it a second thought following the decimation. Everyone who knew Scott was in the quantum realm and had the ability to get him out suddenly vanished when Thanos snapped his fingers, and as far as we knew, there was no way to get out of the quantum realm without some outside assistance. Is it possible that those time vortexes are more relevant than we thought? Could Scott have used them in order to make his escape? We know he gets out somehow since we've seen him unexpectedly show up during the trailer for Avengers Endgame. At some point after the events of Infinity War or in Endgame, he may have ended up face-to-face with Hank Pym at another period in time. During Ant-Man and the Wasp, Scott was able to convince Hope and Hank that he had contact with Janet by describing some of her memories. It's possible that with the inclusion of time travel in the MCU, it's now possible for future events to influence the past. This could prove to be an important part of the MCU going forward. Why time travel? Well, first of all, it finally exists in the MCU, and we've seen characters utilize it before. Second of all, how else are they going to undo the decimation? Because that's kind of a big deal, especially with Spider-Man Far From Home getting ready to hit theaters following Endgame. We are kind of going to need Peter Parker to not be a pile of dust for that one. In addition to Janet Van Dyne's comment about time vortexes, we've also seen some Endgame set photos which make it look like our heroes are revisiting the Battle of New York. Even the latest trailer seems to show Tony Stark and Steve Rogers reunited at the site of this famous battle. And let's not forget that time manipulation was a surprisingly huge part of the movie Doctor Strange. It was easy to forget this amongst all of the flashy magic, but we did learn a lot about the importance of time and then how it motivates the actions of characters in the MCU. Caecilius claims time kills everything, but less destructive characters don't see things this way. The Ancient One claims that while people can't choose their time, death is what gives life meaning. It's actually a pretty familiar argument to Marvel fans. Vision makes a similar speech to Ultron in Avengers Age of Ultron. Sure, our heroes can use plot devices like the Time Stone or Time Vortexes in order to manipulate time, but this doesn't necessarily make the time they use to experience their lives more or less valuable and meaningful. Despite being able to explore all possible futures and manipulating time, the Ancient One still placed a great value on her life. When her time on Earth grew short, she desperately tried to hold out until the last possible moment. There are also some ways in which time manipulation can backfire. Wong and Mordo warned Doctor Strange that this could happen, and Dormammu learned the consequences of messing with time firsthand. The dreaded being was forced to spend an extended amount of time with Doctor Strange. Oh, poor thing. Among the other consequences mentioned were unstable dimensional openings, spatial paradoxes, and time loops. Doctor Strange was also informed that temporal manipulations can create branches in time. If our heroes do use time travel to affect previous events in the MCU, this could leave them in a universe that's forever changed. The universe of Marvel comic books has different dimensions which coexist, and it's possible the MCU will develop these as well. But it could be that the method of time travel used will affect the ramifications. If our heroes use the quantum realm in order to travel through time in Endgame, will the rules be different than if they were to use the Time Stone? Because we haven't seen our heroes use this method of time travel, it'll be interesting to see if the rules differ from those which occur when using an Infinity Stone. Maybe using the quantum realm will allow our heroes to change aspects of the MCU's history while minimizing any sort of butterfly effect from taking place. What do you think about the idea that time travel could explain certain events which have taken place in the MCU up until this point? Let us know what you think in the comments section, and then click on the subscribe button for more videos from us here at CBR. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.
Again, guys, we're just going to be listening to a bit more CBR.
Doctor Strange might have looked at 14,605 possible futures in Infinity War, but it feels like we've looked at about that many fan theories about Avengers Endgame. We've explored everything from Loki being secretly disguised as Bruce Banner to supergiant mind-controlling Thor, but today we're going to be talking about some of the most likely things that are going to take place in Endgame, and what that means for the future of the MCU.
I think I'm going to have to find something else, guys.
The return of Asgard. Poor Thor. It's not hard to feel bad for the God of Thunder as we get ready to take a look at Avengers Endgame. Sure, we could get mad at him for not aiming for Thanos' head, but it's hard to be angry at someone.
We're going to have to go back in here. Flick the screen. Oh no, I lost the video I was watching. Watch this then.
Mum leaves this phone hook up in her car.
Put it on the shortlist.
Avengers Endgame, the culmination of the last 11 years of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is out in the wild, able to be consumed with our eyeballs.
We're in the Endgame now.
And judging by the box office numbers so far, you've probably seen it, statistically speaking, that is. So let's chat about it, shall we? We'll be going through the entire film here, so spoilers ahead. Think of this as an addendum of sorts to the MCU recap vid that we put out before the movie was released. We'll summarize it here and add in some commentary where appropriate. So let's get started. The film opened in easily the most depressing way that it could have possibly opened. We get to see Clint Hawkeye Barton and his family having a lovely picnic out near their home, while Barton trains little Barton on how to shoot a bow. He even jokingly calls her Hawkeye at one point as a possible hint to the Young Avengers. Maybe, possibly, kinda. Here's to hoping. Of course, exactly what we think is gonna happen happens. They turn to dust after Thanos snaps his fingers in Wakanda. This serves as a very shocking introduction to the film that almost perfectly sets up the tone that the first act will wallow in. crushing sadness and deep feelings of failure, which is something that the next section of the film highlights well, showcasing the movie's penchant for balancing humor with its darker tone as we see Nebula and Tony Stark surviving in the depths of space, bonding over a paper football game despite the fact that they were in a hopeless situation. Luckily, as it turns out, all hope was not actually lost, as Captain Marvel arrived just in time to save them from starvation, at least save Tony from starvation. Does Nebula actually need to eat, being all cyborgish and whatnot? Something to think about. She helps them get back to Earth, where the remaining Avengers, along with Pepper Potts, are waiting for them. This is followed by a little spat between Tony and Captain America, showing that Tony still harbors a lot of anger over the events of Civil War. Even more so, actually, since he blames the team being divided for Thanos being able to win. Can't really argue with him on that point. The team, minus Tony of course, discover that Thanos had recently used the stones a second time on a far-off planet and figured, hey, now we know where he is. Let's get that fancy glove of his and snap everyone back. So they all hop onto the Guardians of the Galaxy starship and shoot off across the cosmos. Take a second to think about this from Cap's perspective. He was born in the 1920s. To him, it wasn't that long ago he was playing with a ball and stick for fun, and now he's in space. That has just gotta blow his mind. Anyways, they make it to Thanos' farm and interrupt his dinner, which is just kind of rude, guys. Turns out, though, that they can't really take the stones from him because the last time he used them to destroy them so that the temptation to use them wouldn't be there. That makes sense? This doesn't sit too well with the team, and Thor finally shows that he learned his lesson from the last time and goes for the head. Flash forward 5 years. Yeah, 5 years, which means that this film takes place in 2023, since the beginning was set a month or so after Infinity War that was set in 2018. Math. At this time, the team is spread to the wind. Rocket and Nebula are off gallivanting across the galaxy, as is Captain Marvel, while James Rhodes is on the trail of Barton, who has been spending the last few years hunting down criminals who survived the decimation. All this with Natasha Romanoff running things back at Avengers HQ. Oh yeah, and Cap is off running a survivors support group. Meanwhile, across the country in a storage unit, a rat manages to trigger the control panel in the brown van containing Hank Pym's quantum tunnel thingy, freeing Scott Lang from the quantum realm, where he had been trapped for the past 5 years.
Hello? Ha ha, very funny.
Learning what had happened, he makes his way to Avengers HQ, where he explains to an understandably befuddled Cap and Romanoff that, while it had been 5 years for them, it had only been 5 hours for him, since time works differently in the quantum realm. So wait, wouldn't that mean that Janet Van Dyne and Ant-Man and the Wasp should be significantly younger, since she only would have experienced like a few days or so during her time being trapped in there? Guess this is one of those things that works best if you just don't think about it too hard. Any hooser, Lang then poses an interesting and admittedly fairly bonkers solution for the situation that the world currently finds itself in. Flippin' time travel. Talking about some straight up H.G. Wells stuff here. Plan is to go back in time, grab the stones before Thanos does, return to the present, and snap all of the people taken in the decimation back to existence. Bingo bango. One tiny problem, though. For all this to work, the team would need a certified genius to figure out how to properly traverse the quantum realm. And with Hank Pym currently able to fit in a Hoover, that really only leaves them with one option: Tony Stark. Cap, Romanoff, and Lang head out to meet up with Stark at his lakeside home to discuss the idea with him, though he's not a fan and refuses to help, stating that he wouldn't want any potential changes to the timeline to mess with what he has now, specifically his daughter. The trio instead turn to Bruce Banner, who, by this point, has figured out how to reconcile his two halves, Banner and the Hulk, becoming what is essentially Professor Hulk. He agrees to help with their whole effort to build a time machine, though he notes that it's not really his area of expertise. Though without Stark, he is their best bet. With some hope that this crazy plan may actually work, the team sets about gathering the remaining members from across the globe. Rocket and Banner head out to Norway, specifically an area known as New Asgard, where they find a drunk and much fatter Thor, still reeling from his failure to stop Thanos. Also, we get to see that the best character in the entire MCU survived. Ah, heck yeah, you know I'm talking about Korg. After some convincing, Thor reluctantly goes with them back to Avengers HQ, mainly because he is promised beer. Over in Japan, Barton was just getting done brutally finishing off a crime lord when Romanoff shows up. He's not super thrilled about seeing her, being that, he's kind of gone a bit off the deep end, and no one wants their friends to see them like that. When she brings up the fact that he may be able to bring his family back, though, he pretty quickly jumps on board and signs up. After taking some time to break down where, and more importantly, when each of the stones could be found, the team split into several groups. Banner, Cap, Lang, and Stark are sent back to New York, circa 2012. For those of you paying attention, that's the first Avengers film, since it was determined that at that time, there were 3 stones in the city at once. Banner goes to the Sanctum Sanctorum and finds the Ancient One, who's holding on to the Time Stone. The two talk for quite a while, with the Ancient One explaining that if she gives up the stone now, it will doom her timeline, since time travel in the MCU works kind of like what we see in Back to the Future Part 2, with changes in the past not affecting your present, but instead causing an alternate timeline to be created. So Banner promises to return the stones to their right time when they're done with them, and the Ancient One relents, giving him the Time Stone. Across town, Stark and Lang are attempting to get the Tesseract from 2012 Stark, which doesn't go super well, as a mishap involving 2012 Hulk causes Loki to get free and take the Tesseract himself. Meanwhile, Cap manages to snag Loki's staff from some S.H.I.E.L.D. agents by pretending to be affiliated with Hydra, and he nearly gets away with it scot-free until he runs into his past self, who thinks he is an escaped Loki. The two brawl, and 2023 Cap emerges victorious. So with only 2 stones down, things aren't looking so great. But Stark and Cap devise a plan to go back even further in time to the 70s to grab the Tesseract from S.H.I.E.L.D. This works as the two would also be able to grab extra Pym particles, which they need to return to the present. In the 70s, things go relatively smoothly, with the only major hiccup being Stark running into his father, though this allows Stark to get a little bit of closure in regards to his relationship with Howard Stark, something that has played a rather major role in terms of his character arc throughout the entire franchise. He has had some pretty serious father issues. Thor and Rocket went back to Asgard circa 2013 and managed to snag the Aether from Jane Foster, and Thor also got a sweet moment with his mother, who would actually go on to die later that day. Bit of a bummer there, but as I said, pretty touching moment. Also, Thor grabs Mjolnir because why not? Romanoff and Barton find themselves on Vormir in 2014 and learn from Red Skull, just as Thanos did in Infinity War, that one of them must sacrifice the other in order to gain the Soul Stone. Obviously, the two fight about this, as both of them believe that they should be the one sacrificed. After a bit of a tussle, Romanoff ultimately wins out, throwing herself off the cliff to her death, gaining Barton the Soul Stone. That same year on the planet Morag, Nebula and Rhodes intercept Peter Quill and knock him out before he can acquire the Power Stone, claiming it for themselves. Nebula's presence in the past does cause a bit of an issue though, as her past self's Wi-Fi connection or whatever it is freaks out, since 2 of the same IP exist on the network, which is apparently a no-no. So she learns about her future self, and Thanos sends her forward in time disguised as 2023 Nebula after capturing the future version of herself. I hope that you're following along pretty well, because some of this time travel stuff does make this a little bit confusing, but I'm sure that you've got it figured out. With all the Infinity Stones now back to the present day, Banner uses them to return everybody previously snapped away back into existence, including some cute little birdies that Lang marvels at, proving that it was in fact all living creatures and not just people. Humans, fish, dogs, cats, birds, all of them got hit. The celebration here is a bit short-lived, however, as 2014 Nebula uses the time machine to bring forward in time Thanos and his army.
Destiny arrives all the same, and now it's here.
Who rather quickly devastates the entire Avengers HQ. 2014 Gamora frees 2023 Nebula, and the two confront 2014 Nebula, who had just gained possession of the fancy Iron Infinity Gauntlet from Barton, who had rescued it after the HQ caved in. 2014 Nebula nearly shoots 2014 Gamora, but 2023 Nebula shoots her first. Man, all of this stuff is really getting confusing, but hopefully you're following along. There's not really a lot that I can do here to make it more clear. The main Avengers trio head out to face off against Thanos, and they do all right, I guess, though things take a pretty bad turn fairly quickly. Stark gets knocked out, Thor almost gets stabbed, and Cap's shield gets cracked and shattered, but not before Cap picks up Mjolnir, finally paying off a small moment from Age of Ultron where Cap managed to ship the hammer of Thor just a little bit. It was in fact a very awesome moment, but not nearly as awesome as what comes next. Portals open up behind Cap, bringing with them all of the restored heroes. And I really mean all of them. Basically every living character makes an appearance here, from the big stars like Black Panther, all the way down to the supporting heroes like Wong and Korg. Even Pepper Potts makes her presence known, rocking her own suit of armor. A major battle ensues, pretty much giving all of us Marvel fans all of the awesome superhero-y imagery that we could possibly hope for. Lang and the returned Hope Van Dyne attempt to get the Quantum Tunnel in the van to work so that they can restore the stones to the past. But Thanos puts a stop to that pretty quickly. Even Captain Marvel herself can't keep the stones away from him, as he is able to claim the gauntlet and attempt to snap his fingers like his future self did in Infinity War. Captain Marvel stops him the first time, and Tony Stark steps up and tackles him. Both heroes fail to stop him from snapping, however, though this time nothing happens, as Stark had taken his chance and stolen the stones right from under his nose, and he goes and snaps himself, dusting both Thanos and his army like he did so many innocents before. This exacts a heavy toll on Stark, however, who is killed by the overwhelming power of the stones, as Rhodes, Spider-Man, and Potts watch on solemnly. They won the day, bringing an end to the Infinity Saga, but at the cost of the original MCU hero. Iron Man was gone, bringing a satisfying end to the character's arc, going from the selfish playboy to the one who would risk everything to do what was right. At his funeral along the shore of his lakeside home, all of the remaining heroes of the MCU stood in reverence of their fallen comrade. Even Iron Man 3's Harley Keener was there, in a nice little nod to the often maligned entry in the MCU. We also see Thor passing off the throne of New Asgard to Valkyrie, stating that it was time for him to try to live his life as he wants, not as he thinks is best for others. He then is seen on the Guardian's ship, where it seems he will be staying for a while, joining the team proper, where he will probably be helping them in their search for the 2014 version of Gamora, who went missing after the battle at Avengers HQ. So basically, the Avengers are once again spread out and doing their own things, but the team's job was not over yet, as the stones still had to be returned to their proper place in time. Cap is chosen for this task and sent back in time with the stones and Mjolnir. Though it is said by Hulk that Cap would return in mere moments, he doesn't. Instead, Falcon and Bucky spot an old man sitting by the lake. Investigating, they discover that it is, in fact, an older Captain America, who had taken the opportunity to go back in time to live the life he always dreamed of, but could never achieve. A life with his best gal, Peggy Carter. It was seemingly a good life in the end, a deserved rest for the first Avenger, who brings the film to a close by passing his shield on to Falcon, making him the new Captain America, at least symbolically. And that brings with it the end of not just Avengers Endgame, but also the Infinity Saga as a whole. What is next for the MCU? Well, at this point, all we really know is that Spider-Man Far From Home will open an entirely new chapter in the billion-dollar franchise. We may not know much, I guess, but you can be sure that we here at Screen Rant are definitely going to be around with all of our commentary and wild speculation. What did you think about Avengers Endgame? Which part was your favorite? What do you think is in store for the MCU moving forward? Let us know down in the comments below, and while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe to Screen Rant for even more great content just like this. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you at the movies.
Captain America is one of Marvel's most popular superheroes, and he's become more popular than ever since Chris Evans started playing the character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe in 2011.
I love this all day.
By now, pretty much everyone knows the basics of the character. The fact that he was a World War II soldier who had his physical attributes enhanced to the peak of human potential using an experimental serum. But there's actually a lot more than that to the man otherwise known as Steve Rogers. In this video, we'll tell you why Captain America is far more powerful than you ever thought he was. Before we get into the meat of this video, we're going to touch upon a theory which, if it's true, will make you look at Captain America in a whole new light. It relates to that awesome moment in 2018's Avengers Infinity War when Thanos arrived on Earth to take the Mind Stone. and simply waded through the MCU's heroes like a hot knife through butter. He met some resistance in the form of the courageous Steve Rogers. As the Mad Titan moved his left hand towards Rogers, the hero was able to stop it using both of his hands. If you look at the Mad Titan's facial expression, he's obviously very shocked by the initial block, as though he's thinking, how the heck is this little human able to do this? But what exactly is it that Rogers is doing? You see, this theory suggests he's not exactly physically blocking Thanos' hand. We've already seen the prune-shinned villain totally manhandling the Hulk, and Rogers is definitely not stronger than the Green Goliath.
Here we go.
So could it be that, given that the Infinity Stones work by responding to the will of the user, Rogers, who was in contact with the Gauntlet at that moment, was kind of outwilling Thanos? Could it really be the case that while none of the Infinity Stones were actively being used, they were instinctively responding to both Thanos and Rogers' wills respectively, with Rogers' will being stronger? In the comic books, Steve Rogers has incredible willpower. And if he has that level of willpower in the MCU, which the aforementioned scene may suggest he does, that certainly makes him even tougher than he realized. But that's a speculative notion, and now we're moving on to the harder facts by discussing some of the superpowers and abilities Captain America possesses that you might not know about. Obviously, the Super Soldier Serum gives Cap incredible speed, strength, and enhanced durability. But did you also know the other physical benefits it grants him? For one, it renders him practically immune to fatigue.
I can do this all day.
Granted, in scenarios involving extreme physical exertion, he will momentarily tire, but ultimately he can keep going and going when others would collapse of exhaustion. But he doesn't get by in a fight just by being a remarkable physical specimen. Oh no. Cap is also very skilled. While it's hard to tell exactly what styles of fighting MCU Cap is an expert in, he's definitely a capable fighter. And if he's anything like his comic book counterpart, he'll be adept in many forms of combat. Comic book Cap is skilled in acrobatics, marine combat, boxing, judo, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, and just about everything else, having spent countless hours honing his fighting skills. Now, all that being said, Captain America is neither durable enough to stop a tank or quick enough to avoid a bullet. But never fear, the Super Soldier's uniform is completely bulletproof, covering him in a lightweight protective shell that most of his enemies don't even know about. It's also completely fire resistant. But rather conveniently, in the event that Captain America does ever get injured, he heals quickly thanks to his super healing powers. For example, the Super Soldier is able to heal from broken bones in a single day and recover from bullet or knife wounds in just hours, if indeed he takes a hit while not wearing his aforementioned armor. He's come back from his fair share of bad injuries very quickly. He once came back from a broken neck after just a week. His healing powers also mean that he's immune to deadly poisons and toxins, as well as all earthly diseases.
I can't get drunk.
Although we'd like to see him tested by drinking some Asgardian booze that was aged for 1,000 years in the barrels built from the wreck of Grunhar's fleet.
Eggshell shield.
He's often referred to as a
Man out of time.
but that's not just because he was thawed out decades after he ended up in ice during the war. It also makes sense because his aging is practically halted. If you think no normal individual could survive being frozen for 70 years, you'd be correct. But Captain America is no normal individual. Now, we've already mentioned that Cap is known for having incredible willpower, and in comics, that often enables characters to resist the effects of mind-controlling or mind-altering powers. Dr. Doom, for example, has such incredible levels of willpower that he can outright resist attempts from telepaths to get into his head. While Captain America isn't that strong-willed, and we've already seen him manipulated by Scarlet Witch in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he does have resistance to some mind-based shenanigans, including hypnosis. This somewhat obscure resistance ability comes from his astounding knack of never losing focus, no matter what, which may also be a contributing factor as to why no gases or other chemicals can affect him either. One of the most surprising superpowers Cap has, which often goes forgotten even by his biggest fans, is his super intelligence. Yeah, that's right. Captain America is actually something of a genius.
It seems to run on some form of electricity.
Along with his body, his mind was massively enhanced by the Super Soldier Serum. Cap is able to complete lightning-fast calculations and make life-saving decisions in a fraction of a second. Perhaps if Cap wasn't so brave, strong, fast, and durable, everyone would be talking about his ability to analyze threats and quickly react to them in real time. In addition to all of that, Captain America also has a perfect memory. One of the more surprising superpowers Cap has, one that even uber Cap nerds aren't always aware of, is actually super eyesight. It allows him to see further than the average human, process incoming visual stimuli incredibly quickly, and pick out information that may be useful to him and his fellow heroes. Now, for this next amazing ability, we need to warn you in advance that it will involve a spoiler for Avengers Endgame. So, if you haven't seen that movie yet, stop the video now. We're serious. Spoilers ahead.
He's pretty good at that.
Right? Okay, if you're still here, we'll assume you've either seen Endgame or you're happy to hear about it. So, here goes. Another incredible ability that Cap possesses is the ability to wield Thor's hammer Mjolnir, a weapon any given individual needs to be deemed worthy of wielding. In 2015's Avengers Age of Ultron, we saw Chris Evans' version of the character slightly budge the powerful weapon. But in Endgame, he finally wields it for real, and it's something he's done on several occasions in the comic books. Cap is worthy because he's a true hero, whose intentions are good, who is pure of heart, incredibly brave, and who would willingly lay his life on the line to save others. Next up, we come to a skill Captain America has that, on the face of it, doesn't seem to be of use in a fight. But it's worth noting nonetheless, and it's the fact that Cap is actually really good at art. It's one of the most overlooked aspects of the character. Seriously, he's incredibly talented, and had he not become Captain America, he would actually have gone to art school. As a matter of fact, one of the more impressive trivia tidbits in Marvel history is that Steve Rogers actually created...
Okay, that's enough for Captain America, I think. Let's go talk about what Iron Man we've done here. I am getting to a point where I'm going to have to stop, guys, because it's getting to that point of the day where I've got to start doing other things. So if you have enjoyed watching and listening to everything that you have and you want to go and watch it yourself instead of just listening to it, let me know in the comment section and I will send you a link. Unless there's a link already down there below for you to click. Don't forget to go all the way down to the bottom to find the comment section where you find most of the links. And if because we're live at the moment, it may take me a couple minutes to get those links up and running. But this isn't the finish, guys. This will be continued probably tomorrow in the daytime. It may even happen in the evening tonight. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button, guys, and leave a like if you do. If you would like to see this in full quality, guys, I'm going to be recording the next part. Because I'm going to be going into some great details, and I don't think you're going to be able to see everything that's actually going on. Otherwise, guys, thank you very much for watching. My name's Blut084, BLUT084, Art and Games. If you have enjoyed it, don't forget to check out the paper version, which is where this came from. Otherwise, I will see you next time. Click the links that will appear. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.
You won. Mrs. Stark. You won, Mrs. Stark. You won. You did it, sir. You did it.
The only thing you really fight for is yourself.
Kemper, get outside. Go!
You're not the guy to make the sacrifice play. To lay down on a wire and let the other guy crawl over you. You know, you may not be a threat, but you better stop pretending to be a hero.
What have I to fear? The Avengers? That's what we call ourselves. Sort of like a team. We all need family. The Avengers are yours. Maybe more so than mine. Kid, you're an Avenger now. Tell me his name again.
Thanos. He's a plague, Tony. He invades planets, he takes what he wants, he wipes out half the population. He sent Loki. The attack on New York. That's him.
I don't think you quite understand what's at stake here. It's you who doesn't understand that Thanos has been inside my head for 6 years. Since he's been going into New York and now he's back. And I don't know what to do. This is it. How are you guys planning on meeting them? Together. We'll lose. And we'll do that together too. Are you that guy?
Are you?
Because if you are, then you can solve
little bit of your heart.
Don't waste it. Don't waste your life.
The threat is imminent, and I have to protect the one thing that I can't live without. That's you. And my suits, they're part of me. What do you remember about your dad, huh? He was cold, he was calculating. He never told me he loved me, he never even told me he liked me.
But one day you'll figure this out. And when you do, you will change the world.
And I'm the man who killed the Avengers. Being on your feet, I wasn't tricked, I was shown. It was a 9 years old.
I can't take this.
Wait, look at me.
My body literally cannot handle the stress. I never know if you're gonna kill yourself or wreck the whole company.
I think I did okay. I hope they remember you. How many will win?
What is and always will be my greatest creation is you.
I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Spirit, please. I am Iron Man. Trying to keep you from turning the Avengers to front.
We are not soldiers. Isn't that the why we fight? So we can end the fight, so we get to go home?
Every time someone tries to end the war before it starts, innocent people die.
Papa!
I'm sorry, did I just mishear you, or did you?
Oh,
No, you can't retract it. It's such good care. Been in a tough spot. You got me through it. Yeah, my respects, though. I was wrong about you. I will miss you. Yeah?
I love you, Dad.
You can miss me.
Again, guys, thank you very much for watching. My name's been Blue084. Click the links that will appear if you want to check out the artwork from this week. Spoilers, but hey, guys, all I can say is see you next time.